What is the strongest card from the DM era? Some people may say Chaos Emperor Dragon, some might say Imperial Order, or a lot of people including casuals who haven't played in a long time would say Pot of Greed. Well, what if I told you that none of those cards are the answer, according to Upper Deck that is. In fact, the strongest card is something that even the former head of Upper Deck R&D admitted to be the strongest, but only he had a copy of it. That card is Millennium Thousand Eyes Virus. You might say, excuse me? Who? What is that? And how come we haven't heard of it? Well, that's because this card was never printed, and the only person who owned it was Kevin Tuard. Who is Kevin Tuard, you might ask? Kevin Tuard used to be the head of Upper Deck R&D when they used to control YuGiOh in the West. He would tell all the rulings, he would be in charge of managing the game in the West, and he was in charge of making cards in the TCG. Yeah, that's right. Upper Deck made their own cards just like Konami TCG today. A prime example of this is Allure of Darkness. That card was made by Upper Deck, not Konami. Anyways, Kevin Tuard admitted that Thousand Eyes Virus was the strongest card in Yu-Gi-Oh! On Pojo. Just a quick summary on what Pojo is to all my new school players. Just think of Pojo as the old school version of Reddit but for Yu-Gi-Oh! And Kevin Tuard would actually talk to players on that site. That was basically players' ways of communicating with Upper Deck or Konami once Kevin Tuard switched to it after the lawsuit, if they had any questions. Back to the main point, in May of 2005, people were discussing on Pojo what the strongest card is, and Kevin posted that the strongest card is Millennium Thousand Eyes Virus, but he was the only one that had a copy of the card. At first, people didn't care too much about it, but he kept boasting about it, as on June, he mentioned this card again when people thought a card called Level Limit Area Q was being made. Kevin said that that was just a joke he made up, but Thousand Eyes Virus on the other hand, he basically kept hyping up this card to the point where people on Pojo were wondering, what does this card do? However, Kevin would never go further with this card or what it does or anything like that. In fact, after 2005, he would never mention this card again. Which begs the question, was this card real? Was it something being in the works? Or was he lying about all of this? Well, I would like to believe that this card could have been in the works. As I said before, Upper Deck did make cards too, like Allure of Darkness and Beast of Talwar. Plus, there were probably so many cards that are in like either Upper Deck's or Konami's vault that they thought of but never actually printed, so there could have been a possibility that this card was real and Kevin may have been testing it out. The question is, what kind of card is it? I saw that some people guessed that it could be a millenniumized version of Crush Card Virus, but to me, I don't think that could be it. I personally believe that it could be more of a fusion monster because of the whole Thousand Eyes part on it, and the virus part could stand for like being sick or dead. Now, you might ask, if it's a fusion monster, then what are his materials? Well, first and most likely it would be Relinquish, because usually these Thousand Eyes fusion monsters require him, like Thousand Eyes Restrict and Millennium Restrict. But there could be a chance I would also require Thousand Eyes Restrict, because back then you could summon him easily with like Metamorphosis. But I think Relinquish is the most likely candidate. But who is the second material? Some of you might think Crush Card, but that won't work because number one, you can't fuse with a trap card, and before you say Fang of Critias, that card didn't exist during the DM era. And number two, Crush Card didn't come out into the TCG until the GX era, so we didn't have Crush Card during the DM era. So who could the second material be? My personal theory is that the second material could be a card that Kevin Tuard admitted to be broken during the DM era, and that card is Tribe Infecting Virus. I know a lot of you might say, why that card? Well, first off, during DM, this card was nuts. Just ask any old school player. It had the possibility to blow up the entire board, and with Ignition Priority, oh boy, your board was done. Secondly, Kevin Tuard admitted on Pojo that this card was powerful, as Kevin himself did manage competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, the reason why this card was banned for so long was that Kevin thought that Tribe would hurt type-specific decks, like an all-warrior deck, which is why it was banned until like 2020. And finally, I think it's Tribe because of the timing. You see, Tribe was banned in October 2005, the same year Kevin started talking about Thousand Eyes Virus, as well as the same year he stopped talking about it. After all, if one of the materials was banned for a long time, then it would make sense why this card was never printed. You see, during the DM era, fusion materials were very specific compared to today, so it would make sense that if Tribe was banned, then Kevin would have no point of printing Thousand Eyes Virus. As for its effect, I think it could be something like, you can equip your opponent's monster, then send that monster to the graveyard to blow up all monsters on the board of the same type as that equipped monster. I mean, if that was his effect, that could be very powerful. After all, Thousand Eyes Restrict was the best during in GOAT format, so maybe this card would have been played during the DM era, especially when Metamorphosis was around. That's just my theory on what Thousand Eyes Virus could be and why he may have not been printed, but let's look at the other possibility. There also is the possibility that Kevin may have been lying about this card. You see, Kevin Tuard wasn't the best representative of Upper Deck and Konami. He was kind of toxic. Ask any old school player that went on Pojo back then and they can agree with this. What did Kevin do, you ask? Well, if you would insult what Konami or Upper Deck did, Kevin would respond and call you an idiot, then explain why they did what they did. In fact, I found this on Pojo to prove my point. On one forum, someone asked about the ruling between Spell Canceller and Level Limit Area B. Kevin responded with the correct ruling, but then said they don't have Level Limit Area Q. Basically, he was calling that person dumb. Which, I know times were different, but is it really a good idea to insult your customers? So yeah, there was the possibility that Kevin was lying about all this, and he may have just wanted to flex on us or something. Though, not all hope is lost. You see, something interesting about Konami is that they tend to print cards that were mentioned in other media in the past, but never actually seen during that time period. One example is the Zexel weapon Dragnotic Halberd. A lot of people don't know this, but Zexel weapon Dragnotic Halberd was meant to be used in Yuma's final duel with Tron. What happened was TV Tokyo hyped up this card, calling it the most powerful Zexel weapon, way before this episode would come out. Sadly, when the episode was close to coming out, they changed their statement to Zexel weapon Leo Arms, completely erasing Dragnotic Halberd. However, as a lot of you know, Konami did end up printing this card in 2021's Lightning Overdrive, and with all the features that TV Tokyo talked about in their description. They also printed Utopia Ray equipped with Halberd, showing us what the card would have looked like if he was used in the anime. Another example would be the Crystal Clearwing Synchro Dragon. In 2017 on a live feature match, YuGiOh and Jack's voice actors dueled, and when YuGiOh's voice actor was about to summon Clearwing Synchro Dragon, he almost said Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, so when he tried to correct himself, he ended up combining the two names together. Here, just watch this clip and you'll see what I mean.
Synchro Token! 現れろレベル7クリスタルクリアウィングシンクロドラゴン
His mistake literally inspired Konami to make the card that we eventually got in Duelist Pack of Whirlwinds. The only downside about this card is that he's too hard to summon. Even with Cork Shooter, I still think they should have made a Clearwing main deck monster, but that's a discussion for another time. These examples do show that maybe one day Konami could print Millennium Thousand Eyes Virus, but who knows if that would ever happen. Just take that statement with a grain of salt. But nevertheless, it would be cool if they actually did, and it would be nice to know how strong the card would have been. Well, we pretty much reached the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys will subscribe for more content like this.